What's going on? What's going on? So we all know that obviously Gary Russell, he had his fight last night, fought with an injury, shoulder got messed up during the fight, and he pretty much ended up losing the bout against Exile, and I guess there's some kind of talk by multiple people like did PBC play Gary Russell? Did they do him dirty in any way? Have they been doing him dirty? I guess you could say during the last couple of years because he quote hasn't been getting certain big fights. But the short of it is absolutely not. As far as with him taking the loss, I mean, these type of decisions do happen. You know what I mean? They do happen, whether you think he won or he lost. You're looking at somebody like when Charlo when he faced Harris. A lot of people thought that I was at that fight, and I thought that Charlo won that fight, but Harrison got the victory. Harrison getting the victory wasn't in the best interest of PBC. Charlo was the undefeated champion. Obviously, they're the ones that were being promoted and hyped up. He's the one that they would have wanted to have won, but he lost the fight. But they went ahead, they did the rematch, and he came out victorious in that particular bout. When Sean Porter fought against Kell Brook, same thing. In that particular fight, a lot of people think that Sean Porter did win that fight, and Kell Brook was hugging, holding a lot, a lot of things that weren't being called. But at the end of the day, Kell Brook got the victory. That wasn't in the best interest of PBC, but he won the fight. That's just what it is. So as far as Gary Russell, you're over here, you're fighting with one hand. I think his biggest mistake was, okay, your left hand is messed up. Cool, like switch up, because that's another thing. Also, it's like, well, if he was hurt in most cases, that quote, people don't fight. But that's also not true. We seen Deontay Wilder come into fights with a broken hand, with like burns on his hand because he had crashed a motorcycle. So he had a burned hand, third degree burns, whatever is on his arms. His hand is broken, but he still fought. He had to jab, 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 jab with his left hand, jab, jab, and he ended up jabbing himself into a victory. No, I think that fight he had broke his hand in the fight. Which fight did he come out with? Was it the what's his name fight? Well, one of the fights he came in, I'm not sure. I don't remember which fight, but he came into the fight injured. You know, and and he was able to still come out victorious. Floyd Mayweather when he fought against Castillo the first time, his hand he had a just like Gary Russell, he had a messed up shoulder. And he went into the ring with already having a messed up shoulder, understanding that he was going to have surgery after that fight. But he was able to do what you could see them massaging his shoulder, doing everything they needed to do. But he was able to come out victorious from that fight. People go into bouts with injuries, and if he didn't feel like, he didn't, he couldn't do it, then he shouldn't have fought. He shouldn't have fought. This is not some poor guy who doesn't get paid a lot of money. This is a guy who's made $15+ million with PBC. This is a guy who fights and he gets the million plus. He gets the television rights. He gets the gate. I'm pretty sure he got most of the gate for that night as well. Big parts of the concessions. Like he's treated very, very well when he fights. Gary Russell has said it on a million occasions that, hey, these quote other stars won't fight me. So because of that, I'm only going to fight once a year and just fight my mandatory and let my hands, and keep my hands and my body fresh. This is what he's been saying for years. So this is not a situation where people are trying to keep him from not fighting. He hasn't fought because he hasn't wanted to fight. Because in his head, if the big fights, quote, fighters won't fight him, then he's not going to fight. He'll just wait for his mandatories and fight them. He said this a million times. Last year, they had a fight available for him, $1.2 million, according to him. But he was busy trying to make this fight with Devin Haney, dealing with Matchroom. And he kept going on and on. They kept asking him, hey, 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 hey. But the deadline passed. And he got to the point, once the deadline passed, they couldn't keep him on the card anymore. But they waited for him as long as they could. Or he would have fought last year too. He wouldn't have had a 2-year layoff. He wouldn't have had a 23-month hiatus. That happened because he thought he could make something happen with these people, especially with Eddie Hearn, who's known for effing people in these situations. And I didn't believe that fight was really going to happen. And everything I said was going to happen as it pertained to that situation not only happened, but happened exactly how I said it was going to happen. He did that to him. I'm not going to say he, quote, did that to himself because he believed in something and thought he could make it work, but it didn't work. So the consequences were he didn't fight last year. Or was it the year and a half, whatever it was. That's the reason why he didn't fight. You know, Gary Russell, could have been more active. He could have been fighting more than once a year. And as far as getting these fights with these stars, yes, you need to put yourself into a certain space where it's like, hey, you know what? What's the juice is worth the squeeze. You look at someone like what's his name? Not that. Why am I thinking Teofimo? Santa Cruz. You look at someone like Santa Cruz. Santa Cruz wouldn't fight Gary Russell Jr. He wouldn't fight Gamboa. But all of a sudden, he's willing to fight Gervonta Tank Davis. Because Gervonta Tank Davis got himself to a point where that man looked at him and said, you know what? Even though this is a dangerous fight, financially, it's worth my while. If I lose, cool. It's worth it. And he went, he did it, he took his L, moved down in weight. Gary Russell could have stayed active. Gary Russell could have made himself into a bigger star. The blueprint is there. We've seen Deontay Wilder do it. Imagine if Deontay Wilder had that same mindset. Oh, I'm just going to fight my mandatories. If Anthony Joshua and these other guys won't fight me, then I'm just going to fight once a year and keep my body healthy and just that's it. And then you never heard from Deontay Wilder. Like, imagine if it was a month before a fight, you'd heard from Deontay Wilder speaking. Then after that, he'd just go, he'd fight, everybody's all hyped up because they want to push, fights against other people. Then he'd just go quiet. No, that's not what Deontay Wilder did. Deontay Wilder stayed active. He fought other people. Whatever guys they could get him to fight, he fought those people. Not only quote his mandatories. Wilder would go to different events. He would talk to different, to different outlets. So you'd have interviews from YouTubers all over the place from him because he would go to these fights and market himself. Earl Spence was the same thing. The guys wouldn't fight him either. Imagine if he had that same mindset, hey, I'm just going to fight my mandatory. These guys won't fight me, then F them. F it, I'll just fight my mandatory and that's it. He wouldn't be anywhere near where he's at right now. But he did the same thing. He stayed active, he fought, and he went to different events, talked to the media, so there's videos all over about him all over internet, and that kept building up his brand. This is a business, okay? You have to build up your brand. Gary Russell has chosen not to build up his brand, chose not to progress himself when it comes to that aspect of the business. He chose to do that. And this whole thing about PBC holding him back, Gary Russell, in the last couple of years, has also made it clear that he is not signed to Al Heyman as far as like any kind of long-term deal. He works with Al Heyman on a fight-to-fight basis. That's how he works with Al Heyman. He made that very clear on multiple occasions. Gary Russell has gone to other places, tried to get more money from other places. They give him a certain offer, but PBC, Al Heyman, has always paid him the most money. Paid him substantially more than he has to pay him because this guy doesn't promote himself. This guy's not seen out there like that. So he's like, whatever, forget it. And he could just say like, forget it. Yo, we're going to give you this amount. We can give you half of what you usually get. Because we understand what other people are willing and not willing to fight you. But nah, he's done right by that guy. Despite the fact that he doesn't promote himself, despite the fact that he only fights once a year, Al Heyman and PBC have done right by him. He can go wherever he wants to go. He's not signed to Al Heyman. He's not being held back by PBC in any way or any fashion whatsoever. A lot of the issues and the problems that Gary Russell has in his career is because of Gary Russell. Period. A lot of his issues are because of him and the decisions that he made. People make decisions, but when the chickens come to roost, then there's a problem. Terrence Crawford, he chose to re-sign with Top Rank, which means you're not getting the bigger fights, which means you're not going to progress as far as your popularity is concerned. You're not going to get big pay-per-views. But then at the end of the day, when the chickens come to roost in that situation, everything else is blamed because of that. Of why he's in that situation that he's in. Rigondeaux, once his contract, he was being done super dirty by Top Rank. But once his contract was over, once he was able to leave, and Lara was telling him, dude, sign with PBC. They'll keep you active. They'll keep you fighting. What did he decide to do? He decided to sign with Rock Nation. And the second he did it, I'm like, why is he doing that? He's not going to get fights. Rock Nation doesn't really have this space or this spot where they can really do something for your career like that. So even though he was signed to Rock Nation for a couple years, he got no fights because Rock Nation couldn't do anything for him. He chose to make that decision. It didn't work out for him. That's on him for the decision that he made. Okay? I understand there's, certain aspects of it where obviously, there's forces out there that are trying to, keep you, from getting to where you want to get to. But in certain things, you have to look at yourself, at the decisions that you made. Demetrius Andres decided to sign when at first there was really nobody there when he did it. He decided to sign with the Zone. When there was a deal, you could have fought, Jermell Charlo before. You walked away from that deal. Showtime, once the Showtime, a relationship gets fixed a couple years later, they offer you a multi-fight deal with Jermell Charlo as one of the fights. You decide to say no to that and to go to the Zone and with Eddie Hearn. And you choose to do that, which means you're on the Zone, so you're not going to get viewed like that. The viewership's going to be low. They're not going to see you. And the reality is he's probably not going to get you in any of these big fights anyway. All these guys who were signed to DAZN and signed to Eddie Hearn, he couldn't get him any of those fights. But that's a decision that you made. And when it was time to re-up, what did he do? He re-up with Eddie Hearn again, which is fine if that's what you want to do. But then you have to live with the decisions that you made. And Gary Russell's going to have to live with the decision that he's made. He's going to have to make adjustments and changes to the way that he's doing things. You lost your belt, cool. Now you need to stay active. You need to be active. You need to promote all these things that you have been choosing not to do in order for you to get back to where you were and progress even further past that. All these things that you've been choosing and refusing to do, you need to start doing. The blueprint is there. Earl Spence has shown us that blueprint. Deontay Wilder has shown us that blueprint. He's showing us that blueprint. So, Gervonta Tank Davis, I used to see him at fights all the time as well. Progressing, building his brand. Danny Garcia used to be at a whole bunch of fights as well. So, you need to decide what you want to do. What do you want to do? If you want these certain things, you're going to have to put in the work outside of the ring in order to get what you want inside of the ring. And if you're not willing to do those things, then you got to deal with the consequences of that. But Gary Russell is young. He's 33 years old. He's healthy. He looked absolutely fine to me in that ring, besides obviously that shoulder. Obviously, I guess you could say he's, quote, not healthy because he had the messed up shoulder, the injury. But that can be fixed. That's something that can be fixed. He still has the same speed, still has the same skills. Besides, he should have been able to turn orthodox and jab. You know what I'm saying? Your shoulder was messed up. You should have turned orthodox and you should have jabbed that man up with your left. You can go to the body, check left hooks. There's a lot more things you could have done, if you had that arm as your jab. Floyd Mayweather did it before too. He broke his hand. He couldn't use his right hand anymore, and he's an orthodox fighter. He turned southpaw, and he jabbed that boy to death. Jabbed him up for the rest of the fight. And it became, so that's a wrinkle in his repertoire, in his arsenal that he's going to need to add for situations just like the one that he had to deal with. But as far as PBC or Al Heyman doing this man wrong in any way, absolutely not. They can't make those fighters fight him. Just like they can't make him fight more than once a year. They can't make him go to events and promote himself. They can't make him go to social media and promote himself. They can't make him do all the things that he needs to do outside of the ring, to get what he wants and to be great. They can't make him do those things. That's just the reality of it. So I wish Gary Russell nothing but the best. And if he does what he needs to do, I think he'll be great. And if PBC is so bad, hey, go somewhere else. See how it works out for you. Like, subscribe, share. I'm out.